Today we're diving into a source that looks at a tragedy that's been going on for over a century. But here's the thing, this isn't just about what happened in the past. It's about a really profound and honestly pretty unsettling idea for why this cycle of violence just seems to keep going and going. So let's get right into it.
And that really brings us to the core question of this whole explainer. It's a tough one to ask. Why is a genocide that started over 100 years ago still happening? It's a question that makes you look past the news headlines and really dig into these deep, repeating patterns in history. Okay, so before we can even start to unpack what's been happening, we've got to be on the same page about what we're talking about. We need to really understand the word genocide, and not just any definition. We're going straight to the source, the guy who actually invented the term.
So, meet Raphael Lemkin. He was a Polish Jewish lawyer, and in the middle of World War II, watching the absolute horror of the Holocaust unfold, he realized something. There was a huge hole in our language and in our laws. We literally didn't have a word for the planned, systematic destruction of an entire group of people. So, he made one up. He called it genocide. And it wasn't just an academic exercise. For him, it was a weapon, a tool to name this unspeakable crime. Because he believed that if you can name something, you can start to fight it.
And this is the key part of his definition. For Lemkin, genocide wasn't just about mass killing. It wasn't just random violence that happens in a war. It's a coordinated plan. Think of it like a blueprint, a deliberate design for destruction. It's all about the intent behind it.
And Lemkin broke it down even further. He said genocide is basically a two-pronged attack. On one hand, you have the physical destruction. That's the stuff we usually think of, the killing, the violence. It's an attack on the bodies. But, and this is so important, there's a second front, the spiritual destruction. This is where you try to erase a people's soul. You go after their culture, their language, their religion. You try to wipe their very identity off the map.
Okay, so now that we have that framework, let's see how the source we're looking at applies it to a very specific case, the long, tragic history of persecution against the Hazara people in Afghanistan.
Now, when you look at the timeline, it becomes painfully clear this isn't a one-off thing. It's a pattern, a terrible, recurring pattern. You can trace it all the way back to the late 1800s, with decrees that just wiped out a massive chunk of the Hazara population. Then you jump to the 1990s with targeted massacres during the Civil War. And then you come to today, where there's this constant stream of attacks on their schools, their hospitals, their public spaces. The government's changed, the groups in power change, but the target, sadly, stays the same.
Just look at that number, 400,000. That's not people, that's households. 400,000 Hazara households destroyed or just taken. And this was all under the decrees of one single ruler. Just think about that for a second. That's not just an attack. That's trying to rip the entire foundation out from under a society.
And if you want to see Lemkin's two dimensions of genocide in black and white, well, here it is. This is a direct quote from one of those decrees. You've got the physical part right there, extermination and annihilation. But then listen to this part, so that no trace of them remains. That's it. That's the spiritual destruction. It's a chillingly clear plan to erase a people not just from the land, but from memory itself.
So, this all leads us right back to that big question we started with. We can see the pattern. We can see the intent written down in official decrees. But why does it keep happening? After all of this time, why hasn't this vicious cycle been broken?
The source we're exploring has a really powerful theory about this, and it might not be what you expect. It's not just about pointing fingers at external enemies. The author argues the real root cause is something else, something internal.
And here it is. This is the core argument. The author believes the cycle continues because of a failure of collective memory, a failure of historical knowledge among the Hazara people themselves. The idea is that the chain of violence never really gets broken because there's this deep disconnect from the past. It's a failure to build and hold on to a shared memory of what's happened before.
So what are we talking about when we say collective memory? It's not just what you or I remember as individuals. Think of it like a group's shared hard drive. It's the whole pool of stories, knowledge, and experiences that a community holds together. It's what tells them, this is who we are, this is where we came from, and hey, watch out, these are the dangers we've faced before.
And to make this really concrete, the author uses a powerful comparison. Think about the response to the Holocaust. Jewish communities around the world built this incredibly strong, organized collective memory. Museums, memorials, stories. The whole point was never forget. Now contrast that with what the author describes as the Hazara experience, a memory that's weak, fragmented, and alienation from the past. And the terrifying result is that each new generation is left vulnerable because they can't hear the echoes, the warnings from the past.
This quote that the author brings in really nails the danger of that memory gap. He who does not understand his suffering is in paradise. It sounds strange, right? But the point is, if you don't understand the pattern of your own suffering, you have no reason to react when it starts up again. You can't see it coming. And in that way, you are completely defenseless when history decides to repeat itself.
So, if a broken memory is the problem, what's the fix? Well, this is where the author shifts gears. We're now going to look at the proposed solution, how to actually forge memory into a shield, a tool for survival.
And this is a really important point. The author makes it clear this is not about getting stuck in the past or dwelling on victimhood. Not at all. It's the exact opposite. It's about being strategic, using the knowledge of what happened before to build something powerful, a shield of memory that protects the future.
And it's not just a vague idea. The author lays out a practical roadmap. First, you lay the foundation, acknowledge the past, document everything, the stories, the evidence. Then you build on that foundation, create memorials, physical places for remembrance. You make sure you educate the next generation so they don't forget. And all of this leads to the final, critical step, creating deterrence. Using that historical knowledge to build real political and social safeguards that make anyone think twice before trying to repeat these horrors. It's literally a path from trauma to security.
So we're going to leave you with this final question, which really gets to the heart of everything we've talked about today. If people are cut off from their own past, what's left to protect their future? It's a heavy question, and it's a stark warning. For any community that's faced these kinds of threats, the past isn't just a story. It's the bedrock you have to build a safe future on.